Hello, I'm Sophie D'Souza and welcome to my channel, Sophie's Stained Glass. Everything you could possibly want to know about architectural glass and probably some things you don't want to know. Today we're going to look at painting on glass. I have two students with me and I'm going to be teaching them the basics of how to paint on glass. And you may find this useful if you're beginning to paint. One of the students is actually an illustrator and is terrifyingly good at drawing, and he's kindly given one of his designs to the other student to use. So this is one of the designs, obviously heavily black. This one very complex, but there are different ways of approaching this which might make it actually more achievable than it looks. And then the last one, and possibly my favourite one, is this grouse, which has just got beautiful brushwork and movement in it. So without further ado, let's get on and do some painting. So this is an old palette and it's got some dried paint on it, and we can just sort of bring that back to life. But I want to just talk about the paint we use. Rouge paint is the sort of Rolls Royce of paint. There are cheaper other brands available, but this is what I routinely use. They mostly come in earth tones. There's several blacks and there's several types of brown, warmer browns, cooler browns. And I never use black on its own because it's too black. So you mix some brown with it and it softens it a bit. And that's what's on this palette. And once it's fired, it's not this dull grey. The sort of colour it will be actually is the colour you'll see when I add water. It's drinking up that water. So it's much blacker. And that's the sort of colour you'll get after it's fired. Okay. Now what I have in this tub is black and brown already mixed together, and actually you'll find that the second time you mix it, so it's been mixed and it's gone dry, some of the grinding that you do when you mix has already been done, and so it mixes up quicker. So I'm just going to start bringing this little sort of nugget back to life. And you want to be really slow and careful when you add the water, because you add too much, then you're only going to end up using more paint to get the correct mix. And this paint is really expensive, so you want to be a little bit careful about that. So I'm just trying to incorporate everything that's on this palette into a kind of painty puddle, really. Now I wouldn't normally do this on my light box. For various reasons. It's not necessary, number one. Number two, you can often get quite a lot of heat off a light box, and that's going to dry out your paint as you work it. Now this is about as liquid as you'd ever want your paint. You want it to be thin enough to get a flow with your paintbrush. But if you make it too thin, you won't get a nice blackness to your line. It'll look watery. And what you do, I'll just get a paintbrush. What you do is you test your paint on your light box. So this is a sign painter's brush. It's long, and what that means is you can pick up a lot of paint. It'll carry a lot of paint because you don't want to have to keep taking your paintbrush off your work, because it will interrupt the flow of your line. So that's not quite flowing as well as I'd like. So what I do is I put a little puddle of water on my palette, which I can then use to adjust the consistency of my paint. I'm getting a bit closer to what I want now. So that's about what, that's fine, that's what I want. This isn't the thinnest paintbrush in the world, and it's quite a good discipline to practice getting thin strokes with a paintbrush that's not as thin as it could be. So that's number 2. So you might be tempted to go for a 0 or a 000, but you won't be able to carry that much paint. So you can see, look, you can get incredibly fine strokes with a number 2. And it's all about getting the right consistency so you can get a good flow to your line. And it's quite good practice, even when you're working on your drawing, before you paint each time you've replenished your brush, do a couple of strokes on your light box to check you've loaded it the way you want and you get the line the way you want, because better you find out it's wrong on your light box than on your actual design. Now the next thing to talk about is gum arabic. It comes in liquid form and it comes in powdered form. I have it in powdered form, and there is already a bit of gum arabic in here, and I'm going to show you, when these lines have dried, how you test for whether you have enough gum arabic. Gum arabic gives a little adhesion to your paint, so sometimes you may not want to add gum arabic because you might want to have it as loose as possible, as easy to remove as possible, because you might want to be doing interesting sort of effects with it. But usually you do want to have a little bit of staying powder to your paint. Now this is all just wiping off too easy. So that means I've got to mix some gum arabic in. Now I'll show you the sort of amounts, just like this. That's about it. That's about all you'll need. Really, really small amounts. So you mix that in. You probably want to spend a bit more time mixing than I have. And now I'll show you the difference just a tiny bit of gum arabic makes. We'll do that over here. And actually it's just changing the flow of the paint. It's my demanding dog. Obviously wants to get in on the class. It doesn't flow quite as well. You might want to add a tiny bit more water. The gum arabic just changes it a bit, really. So I'm going to do that thing where I put a little puddle over here. Right, we're going to let this dry, and then we're going to see if we've got the right amount of gum arabic in. If it offers too much resistance, you've got too much in, and at that point it's a bit of a pain because you've then got to add more paint, as in more powder. I think this might be dry now. So if you run your finger over it, you can see it's offering resistance. That's still wet, actually. I'm just getting impatient. But you can see it's moving a bit, but not too much. Whereas this, it's going totally. So that's what you want. You want just a little bit of resistance. So we know that paint's got the right amount of gum arabic in, and I hope you could see that was very little. What a naughty dog. Sorry, I'm going to have to go and speak severely to him. Right, so let's get on and start the students off with their painting. I'm going to add another puddle of water, which Ben and Tweety can use on their brushes. The first thing you have to do is clean your glass, and actually glass paint makes a really good cleaner. So you put a tiny bit, that's more than a tiny bit, isn't it? Never mind, on each piece, and wipe it all over using the paint to clean the glass. That's right. If you've got anything on the surface, it's going to inhibit the glass paint from being absorbed into the surface of the glass when you fire it. And the other problem is that if it's grease, it will just, you know, obviously grease, water and oil don't mix, and it will pull away from the surface of the glass. Lovely. Okay, good job. Now, remembering to test your paint on your light box, you're going to make a start. Now, all of these lines are quite fine, so what you're probably going to end up doing is cleaning them up using a nail. So let me get to my little pointy sticks. There we are. So these aren't actually nails, because I find them a bit scratchy. These are straws that have been angled like a quill. So what I'd like Ben and Tweety to do is do a few practice lines on their light boxes, and get comfortable with the brush, comfortable with loading the brush, and then when it's dry, start scratching them back to make them finer lines. So what I mean is, you might have lines like this. When they're dry, you can scratch down the middle and you'll end up with much finer lines, or you can scratch them back into a finer line. So that's probably going to be a useful technique for them to use on these particular drawings. So I'll just let you play around, and when you're comfortable you can make a start on your real designs, remembering that if it goes wrong you can just wipe it off. Yeah? So when you feel, I mean, you may be comfortable and confident already, in which case give it a go.
What, on here?
Yeah? So, it's the next day, and I have with me the results of the firing. I hope that's something you can see. Completely charming, I think you'll agree. And very different, but equally successful. So I hope my students are going to be really pleased with their efforts when I give these to them. I think they did brilliantly well, and I hope the video has been useful for you if you're just learning how to paint on glass. So thank you for watching, and check out the other videos, and please like, comment and subscribe.